America first. America is the number one dog. It's the top dog. It shouldn't be pushed around by anybody, right? It's the alpha, okay? Right. And what gets them frustrated is that they find that a lot of times it's not the alpha that it's trying to project itself to be. Its tail sometimes is wagging it. The tail is oftentimes Israel.
And I think that ties back to the civil war that we see in the United States right now inside the MAGA camp.
When Muslims think of Turkey, they tend to think of this Muslim country. Turkey is very much still Kemalist, by the way.
Assalamu alaikum. It's Abdul Majid Qatraji with Rex Nazarko and Ahmed Ghanem for another week of the Muslim Take. As you know, last week it was crazy. We were discussing the Israeli strike on Iran, something we were all shocked and blown away with. Clearly, we've been blown away by all the details that have happened. But before we go into that, let's go into just a small subject about Turkey. Everybody's talking about Turkey, and then maybe Turkey's next, maybe Pakistan's next. All these names are being thrown out. So just to focus on Turkey, in my opinion, I think Turkey's fine. Turkey's part of NATO. It's very strong. It's got a strong relationship with Trump. And the only risk to Turkey is going to be economic, if it's ever going to be an economic issue. But that has nothing to do with Israel. That has to do with the global economy.
So this is the Muslim take. I have a different take than Dr. Abdul Majid here. I actually believe that Turkey is not guaranteed this safety.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because we are increasingly living in a multipolar geopolitical scene now. Turkey is guaranteed protection on paper by NATO under Article 5, which invokes, all NATO countries to join a war.
Joint protection.
Protect an ally essentially. And on paper that's fine, but in these changing dynamics, I don't believe Turkey is assured that, and even itself, I don't think is confident in that pact. I personally don't even know how long NATO as an alliance has in this multipolar world that I was addressing. But this is confirmed by President Erdogan's statements, who after the strike on Iran by Israel happened, has come out and announced that Turkey will be increasing their missile capabilities for mid and long range missiles. And I think that sort of validates the idea that Turkey does not feel safe in this Israeli hegemony plan, essentially.
Exactly, but is it about the risk or about the opportunity? Erdogan is a very pragmatic leader. He sees an opportunity to gain more power, or to put more demands on the table, and he's going for it. Maybe they will ask Turkey to be a nuclear power. Maybe they will ask to get a nuclear bomb to save themselves. Actually, there was some calls right now for Turkey to start looking at the nuclear option and start trying to develop their nuclear capabilities. Under the current treaties, they can't. But I think Erdogan, as a very
they can get
leader,
a nuclear, right? They can get a nuclear generator for electrical power.
Yes, but not for war.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, he might be saying maybe this is our golden opportunity right now to draft a new opportunity or a new way or new path for us toward that. Before that, it was very hard. So I think I will take it as an opportunity, not as a risk.
To me, there's a certain...
When Muslims think of Turkey, they tend to think of this Muslim country. Turkey is very much still Kemalist, by the way. Erdogan himself may not be Kemalist. Not necessarily.
I think he's the most Kemalist.
But
I think he's followed his book to the...
No, I think he has to play to the audience that even the most religious Turks tend to have some sort of affinity for Kemal Ataturk.
Of course.
So it's a very complex internal reality to deal with, and he has to manage that very carefully. You're right, Turkey still sells oil to Israel. Yeah. Turkey still has joint military exercises with Israel. Turkey's still part of NATO and toes that thin line between East and West very carefully, between Russia and the United States very carefully. But at the end of the day, I think Erdogan is a pragmatic strategist who's playing a long-term game. I think he has a vision that even goes beyond his own lifespan, maybe. Yeah. But he's a visionary. He's been a visionary for the past 3 decades, trying to cultivate a neo-Ottoman resurgence, essentially, politically at least. If you want to,
go ahead.
No, but if you go back to what's happening in reality, like the main topic right now, which is Iran versus Israel, which was the development that's happening every single day. People are waiting for Trump, and I don't know what's your take on all the news media waiting 24/7 on what Trump says, and they start analyzing everything that he says like it's a gospel, and he changed course every like 2 minutes and 2 hours, and
every second.
When he tweeted that we have to evacuate Tehran, And everyone said, "Oh, okay, maybe this is a time right now they're gonna strike and it's gonna strike," but did not strike. Then he came back and said, "We're gonna kill the supreme leader of or we know where he is and we can get him out.
Nothing
But we're not
happened.
getting him out now." It just like, and I think that ties back to the civil war that we see in the United States right now inside the MAGA camp.
I think the idea of not knowing the population of Iran was not the sticking point, okay?
Yes.
But the hard reality is, if you are declaring that you're an expert, right? So here's what you have on you have the issue of the neocon argument that Trump presented in Riyadh about they were trying to interfere and do regime change, okay? So we're not, and then he's like, we're not going to do that, okay?
Right.
Then you have Tulsi Gabbard, also, former Democrat, but now on the Republican side, discussing that the fact that Iran has nuclear capability, okay, but they're not close to a nuclear
Developing a
weapon,
weapon, right.
She even testified in Congress
Yeah,
for
she
this.
did. She
She's the National Director of Intelligence,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that means, by the way, the National Director of Intelligence gets intelligence from Mossad.
Yes.
Just so that we're clear,
They do,
right?
yes, they
they
do.
don't just sit there and it's not in a vacuum.
They
right?
are the top intelligence official in the United States.
Correct,
Yes.
and they gather intelligence from all the other intelligence
Correct.
agencies.
No, but I think this is a very unique situation where the neocon camp has been relatively united in the past. This time around, there has been 3 situation room meetings, and nothing has been announced yet. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a plan in motion. There likely is. The United States does have capabilities ready to strike and join at any time, and I think they will at some point. But there is clearly some hesitancy and some pushback, even within Trump, internally in his own head. And as Dr. Ghanem was saying earlier, he's contradicting himself, let alone from conference. In the same conference, in the same sentence, he's contradicting himself. He's saying, no one knows what I'm going to do. I'm going to strike them, but let them come to Washington and negotiate.
He even said,
right?
I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
He even admits, look, this is Trump. This is not Trump 2.0.
Yeah.
This is the same Donald Trump we've known from the first presidency.
Correct, yeah.
I don't understand, like, when people are looking and they're arguing about, like, we're holding on, like you said, the media is hanging on every word and things like that. Do your job. You got to make analytics. I got a question. How many times did we get double speak from Biden about Gaza? One minute we have to stand firmly with this side. Oh, but I feel so sorry for what's happening in Gaza. And you didn't know which direction that they were going. One minute they were going to do a bridge of aid, and then the next minute they're not. This was under the Biden administration. Trump version 1.0. One minute they were talking about the Abrahamic Accords, then they're recognizing Jerusalem, then the Golan Heights, because no one expected Syria to change. I think it'd be very different on the Golan Heights now. But the point of the matter is, from administration, whether we're doing it with Bush and things like that, but it goes back then to the argument that you had between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz, right?
Yeah.
They are trying to, their job is to mobilize the voting mass to make a declaration, right?
Correct.
And it's clearly they're in 2 different camps. Ted Cruz is in the neocon kind of and by the way, he's not a neocon, but he's definitely not MAGA.
No,
you know what I'm
he's
saying?
not, right.
And then Tucker is definitely historically MAGA. You know what I'm saying? But now I would say it's this kind of like enlightened camp in the MAGA. And I don't mean enlightened in the kind of, oh, you're enlightened. No, what I'm saying is that now that they've been in power, you evolve, right?
Yes.
You suddenly evolve from your position. It's one thing to be a popular movement, but then once you're in, and then you get the information, you have to evolve, right?
But you see what Trump almost sided with the other side when he tweeted about calling him cookie. So he does not like what he's preaching.
Right.
So it's just crazy that Trump is attacking his own base and the millions of people that listen to Tucker Carlson, and actually he was one of the reasons that he got elected, because he was very active during the campaign. Millions of people listened to him. Even of the not just the right wing. A lot of independents listen to him. Is one of the most.
You could say he kick-started Trump's campaign
Yeah.
the second time with that interview that he did.
Exactly. So now you're attacking your base. You're
Right.
attacking big portion of your base. It's not even trying to say, okay, I listen to you, but I want to do this. He's mocking them, which is basically, Trump.
But I think
I mean,
this-
even go ahead.
I think this is typical Trump.
Yeah.
And I think so. So I have I think kind of a different take on what's going on. I don't think Trump was expecting this to happen.
No.
I don't think he was. I think he was thrown off.
I don't think
Trump.
he think that far.
Yeah. So I don't think I don't even think. I think he genuinely wanted to exhaust these diplomat. He wants a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
He's thinking about the Nobel Prize. He's thinking about peace in the Middle East. He got caught by surprise. How do I recover and save face to project strength and not this impotent figure who's being pushed around by the Israelis like Joe Biden? Okay, let me side with him and seem like I'm in control of the situation.
And
Right?
that to me goes to the heart of the Tucker Carlson Ted Cruz debate. It's not about what was said. It is, are we going to let the tail wag the dog, or is the dog going to wag its tail? And that's been the fundamental problem for Tucker Carlson and their group. It's America first. America is the number one dog. It's the top dog. It shouldn't be pushed around by anybody, right? It's the alpha, okay?
Right.
And what gets them frustrated is that they find that a lot of times it's not the alpha that it's trying to project itself to be. Its tail sometimes is wagging it. The tail is oftentimes Israel.
Yeah.
That's where Tucker Carlson gets upset, is like
Yeah.
Israel shouldn't act without any consent from America. It should be clear consent, which clearly wasn't happening, right?
Right.
You had debates within the whereas Ted Cruz is arguing the different thing is, okay, now that we're in this situation, let's do what we do. But the consequence of saying is that means you're not leading.
Yeah.
Right? You're not in the leadership. Both guys may be right, both guys may be wrong. I'm not this, but what I'm telling you is this is the war of the viewpoints between the
Yeah.
two, is who really makes the final say? Who should in the end say that this is global policy?
Yeah.
America as the global leader, in my opinion, and as we've said this last week and always, is that if you're going to be the number one country in the world, you got to be the number one. You cannot be letting one of your smallest countries, okay? I'm not telling you, for the political purposes, Israel's an ally of the United States. Can't avoid that, right? But you cannot always let Israel be the exception. What's the only country in the world who does not have inspectors on its nuclear weapons? Israel, right? What's the only country in the world that can put a blockade cutting off food and causing hunger and agonizing pain and cutting off medical supplies and not be globally prosecuted and then surrounded for genocide?
Yeah, Israel, right.
Okay. I mean, what is the only country that seems to be the exception to what is the only, by the way, I can insult the United States, okay, and I'm not going to have a big issue. That's freedom
Yeah.
of speech. But if I attack Israel, somehow I'm un-American.
Yeah,
I mean,
but this is
or
again, this is the debate that we've seen. I think
this is where I side with Tucker Carlson. But
No, you're right. I can claim that this is the first time to see a debate on that level
Right.
yeah,
about the rule of Israel in our foreign policy. Like we used to say that for a long time, but our debate was like pushed under the rug.
Correct.
Nobody will really put it and centering. Like everyone will start from this, everyone that has big platform will start with saying we're 100% with Israel and stuff like that. This is the first time that you see a popular movement inside the MAGA movement, which is a big movement in the United States, you cannot deny that, saying no to Netanyahu, saying no to Israel, and saying no to some of the fundamentals that's trying to redefine the word Israel, which I think this is one of the most important part of the interview, redefining the word Israel, because the word Israel,
The theological argument,
for
right,
them,
by
it's the
evangelicals.
Israel the same in the Bible.
Yeah.
So it's you have to defend and support. If you are a real Christian, you have to support Israel no matter what, because this is your belief system. This is your Christian duty as a Christian. Now, this person that nobody can say Tucker Carlson is a Christian person. His belief actually shapes a lot of his views.
a very devout Christian.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and now he's saying no. This is not the same Israel.
I
Israel is
think-
different. So this is, because this. What do you think about this? Do you think
I
that's
think
important?
I think it's actually, I think we're underplaying a little bit how cataclysmic this kind of interview was
Yes.
for the neocon camp. And when especially within our community, unfortunately, a lot of people only analyze what is currently happening and they don't have a far-fetched kind of view on what is going to happen. This is a clear fracture of Israeli monopoly on
Exactly.
American public opinion, and going forward, very likely American policy, by the
Yes.
way. Because this public opinion, 2026, 2028, 2030, whatever, it's going to translate into votes.
Yeah, and we see that on
one
the
way
left
or
and
another.
on the right, by the
And by the way, this
and
is
and the argument is not raised by Rashida Tlaib
No,
or
correct.
some Arab or some Muslim or some leftist or Bernie Sanders. It's raised by the people like from the movement, like MTG, Tucker Carlson, all these people.
Candace
people-
Owens, right,
all these
yes,
people,
it's-
maybe Candace a little bit has its own, But those people for the MAGA movement, they are mainstream MAGA movement.
Correct.
You cannot say anything about them.
Right.
And for those people to start this argument and be, to counter and push back, even they tweet back, and if they tweet back at them, they tweet back said, yes, you said that when Netanyahu talked about America first. When I'm okay with America first, but not with America dead. Some of them say this is a threat.
So it's very interesting because I think this interview exposed a lot of things. Number one, that was one thing. Number two, this crazy hostage situation of evangelicals essentially holding American public opinion and foreign policy hostage was exposed, and the entire oftentimes Muslims are accused of being religious extremists, right?
Yeah.
People whose worldview is guided by eschatology and by a Quranic framework. Yet we have a top senator of the United States saying that the only reason he supports Israel is because he believes God told him to support Israel.
Well, then, there you go, right?
So the hypocrisy in that argument, and then you have a Christian pushing back on that. That's monumental, saying that, well, this is wrong. He's shattering a 100-year Zionist project on defining what Israel is, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful thing to do. That is, I think the ripples of that are going to project into the future.
Well, and look, I think we see this debate across all within the Jewish community itself.
Yes.
There's a huge debate about Israel and its role, right? Because let's face it, Israel is a concept for Jews in America, okay? But they're not Israelis by definition, right? Israelis, it's a country, it's a citizenship. You're born and raised there. You go to school there. It's a different, and I think that there's this idea of Israel as concept and then Israel as a country. And I think what people have to realize is the debate has to be about Israel as a country. Yes. Israel as a concept. You're free to do whatever you want. You can believe whatever you want about Israel. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can believe whatever I want about in Islam. Well, the point of the matter here is it's the I don't want to call it the fantasy, but the perception, the emotional attachment. That's one thing, but that's not what we're discussing. No one's I'm not going to tell somebody that your dream of Israel is wrong, okay? What I'm going to tell them is the country that calls itself Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians, right? It's aggressing against its neighbors, okay? Your concept, your dream, that's your business, okay? Yeah. It's the same thing as my concept for Syria or for the United States or for medicine, for my kids. Yeah. That's my dream, you know what I'm saying? But certainly I could tell you what my kids do doesn't necessarily fall in line with my dreams for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And this is, again, the debate is healthy. I think it's very healthy for the United States, very healthy for the American people. You see there is change of positioning. Like you see Thomas Friedman, for example, he wrote an article that this government of Israel is dangerous to the Jews everywhere.
That's why I feel sorry for the Iranian citizen, I feel sorry for the Israeli citizen on the street, right? The everyday average person, right? Because you have both countries. Iran is trying to get into every proxy war in every possible place in the Middle East, right? From Yemen to Syria to Iraq to Palestine, Lebanon, things like that. And then you got Israel, almost literally in the same thing. 1 minute they're in Lebanon, they're also in Israel, they're also in hitting Iran. They've taken the Philadelphia Quarter from Egypt. I mean, the point of the matter is, as a citizen, you're like, how am I going to survive this instability on both sides?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So these governments, in my opinion, are out of control, just literally out of control. This is where I think American leadership has to step in. At some point, it's got to say, look, and this is where I think Trump can make the most good. Enough is enough. He could put his conditions down. I think it's very easy for Iran to say, you know what, we're just going to go nuclear power. All right, and that was what we were discussing, before the show. Apparently, and again, if somebody can correct me, that's fine. But my understanding is 0 houses are powered by the nuclear reactors in Iran. And to me, that's your greatest power to argue. Is like, look, I have 350,000 homes powered by this nuclear reactor, right? So assure the world of your intent, right? For 20, and why you keep saying I have, the purification process for uranium wasn't announced by the United States. It was announced by Iran that we got to 60% purification.
Yeah.
Why make such an? Why don't you just say, hey, look, by the way, we've come up with these new radioisotopes to help treat cancer.
But they started a process. They agreed to come to the peace process. They agreed to come to the table, and two days before they started the peace negotiations, they struck Iran. I mean,
That's a very good point, and this is going back to my earlier point. That I think even the United States, or at least Donald Trump, was somewhat blindsided by what happened, because, in my personal opinion, Israel needs this war to survive. I don't think Israel has any plans for hegemony without wars in the Middle East, because the Middle East is reorienting towards the Gulf and countries that have economic capability to sway allies and partners to be on their side, essentially. So the center of gravity was shifting from Tel Aviv to Doha, to Abu Dhabi, to Riyadh, right?
And
to Istanbul
Yeah,
or
correct.
Ankara,
Yep.
right? And the Israelis knew very well that they were either going to, diplomatically get drowned out eventually and cease, or they start these new wars and fuel their propaganda campaigns.
Well,
further.
and I'm very look. I'm proud of the president of Egypt. I'm sorry, the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, and the president of Syria, Mohammed al-Shara, Ahmed al-Shara. And no, what do you call it? They're showing getting hit. They're showing remarkable restraint. You know what I'm saying? And saying, look, we are focused on economic prosperity. I mean, that's, and honestly, the true path to peace is economic prosperity, right? Because you can't run an economy when you're seeking shelter. You can't sell products, you can't manufacture goods and things like that. And so I really think that that's what we're seeing, the larger Middle East. I know there's a certain idealism where you need these perfect saints to, I don't believe in that. You deal with the realities on the ground. You deal with the practical, what's practical. This may not be your favorite guy or your favorite, but the idea is the person on the street in the end, what they care about, okay, it's not moral victories, and it's not propaganda victories. What they're caring about is the victory in the bank account, okay, and the victory of seeing your child grow up and be what they want to be and succeed. That's, I mean, who doesn't want that, right? That's that's the American dream, right? And honestly, we're seeing that. I think this is where America really has to now say we have to seize the opportunity, right? We have got so many countries now that can finally orient right back into the Western direction. Right?
Yeah.
And
which America? This is a question, because you see, like Ted Cruz, someone that is totally ignorant. He's willingly. I mean, he's been in politics for years and years, and not to understand basic concepts. I'm not talking about how many millions of people in Iran, but at least you have to have like rough number.
No, he should know.
You should
He's
know
on the
the
foreign
ethnic makeup of
intelligence.
it.
Committee.
I
You
agree
should
with you
know-
there,
You should
yeah.
know a lot of those things, but you have a lot of, and I see that when local politicians or Congress people talk about Egypt, talk about the Middle East, talk about Israel, talk about China, you know that they don't know anything. And it's very easy to educate yourself. But I think they don't, I don't know how is that even, like they take talking points from their APAC handlers.
Right.
And they just, this is what you have to say. And that's it, without even trying to understand, or maybe they are so smart and they just,
But that's a wake-up call for
play
us.
into the,
That's a wake-up call for us, because I was reading today, the moment the strikes began,
Yeah.
over 78 legislators each got 100 calls from APAC people
Yes.
telling them to support the strikes. I really want to check, how many calls did they get from us?
No.
Probably very few, if zero in some cases.
And I don't want also to get hard on the Muslim community itself, because you see the Democratic Party and the Democratic establishment is totally silent on that. Who's leading
Correct.
the anti-war movement right now, which is insane, and it will go in history as the worst thing, or the worst part with the democratic leadership. When you have an opportunity to lead the anti-war movement, Obama's silent, Kamala Harris is silent, Biden
Clintons
is
are
silent.
silent.
Yeah, all the main players that's have only few people, like you can see people from they call it far left, like Bernie Sanders, AOC, but you don't see the mainstream, what they call it mainstream establishment Democrats speaking against it. And this is one of the reasons they are not speaking. They don't care. They have their own, they want to get elected. They want APAC money, and they want all this money flowing to them. They want all this, their stocks. They're dealing stocks. You go to a website, and I went to one website, and they were busy dealing stocks a lot of Democratic representative dealing stocks on the days that like 3 or 4 days back when everything is going crazy, and they are buying a lot of stocks. But the leadership vacuum that we see right now in the Democratic Party, that's not just because we cannot just put it on the Muslim. The Muslim
Right.
community is a very small community. We don't have much resources. We don't have much education. We're evolving, but we were in some sort attached to the Democratic Party, getting some of the political help, logistics from the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is silent.
Yeah.
Look, listen, remember, the Muslim community largely was Republican up until 9/11.
That's right.
And really, they stayed Republican even after 9/11, but it was actually the Patriot Act and then the kind of very, the unindicted co-conspirator statements and things like that drove people to the Democratic side, right?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, when you went to the
Yeah,
Democratic...
to be like not like you have the African Americans, which is a big chunk of the Muslim community. They've been Democratic for a long time,
forever.
Yeah.
But they're and there's no question, they're the greatest resource to understand their frustration with the Democratic Party.
Yes.
Because they're there every election, they get promised the moon, sun, and stars every election, and yet zero tangible
Deliverables,
support,
yeah.
deliverables into that. It's really it's really a testament to a lot of the African American leaders, including in the Muslim community, where they started reaching out, getting these investors into their cities and into their neighborhoods and things like that to get the evolution. That's why you see the masajid that are going up in the Detroit area, right, and the areas that the enterprise zones, right. A lot of them led are by the Black Muslim imams, who did. I mean, New York can owe a significant part of its resurrection. Not to all the stuff that happened and things, but to Siraj wa Hajj, you know what I'm saying? And going into the heart of Brooklyn and cleaning that area up and things like that, and then making that a once horrific war zone in the Brooklyn area that he was now one of the most expensive pieces of real estate that you have to buy. So so that goes to the larger issue, is that you're right. But I disagree with you about the Muslims. The Muslims have been here now. We've been here for 100 years. Okay, and now we got to wake up. We have to. We've been so busy arguing about the little knick-knack issues back home. Look, we're not back home. We're in the United States. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I understand. I'm affected by Syria. There's no question. But in the end, I'm also affected by what happens in Oakland County.
Yes.
Right, and I live in Oakland County first. Okay, so that means I got to make sure that things are working great for Oakland County, and that means when my elected officials are making decisions, I got to be there.
Yes.
Okay, and I can tell you, I have yet to meet an elected official who will refuse or tear up a paper you give to them, okay,
Right.
about data and things like that. Now, they may tear that paper up if you come up publicly while they're giving a speech, you know what I'm saying, and then, to make a dramatic effect to show their loyalty and support, okay? But the fact of the matter is, most of them have staff that are desperately seeking information because they do want to put their senators and their congressmen in the best position possible. APEC is organized. APEC is doing everything it can, okay, to make sure that their message is delivered. So what we have to do now is the same thing. All the organizations how many briefs did they send? You know what I'm saying? About not about Iran and not Iran, but what is the risks and the benefits to America? How does America benefit from making sure that Iran is at peace? Right? How does America benefit? How many Iranians are in America? And what I mean by Iranian Americans, you know what I'm saying? And what do they mean? What do they mean economically? Like, that's the data that they're looking for, right? So we in my opinion, I think our community needs to step up.
Yeah, definitely. We need to move, and we need to keep mobilizing, and we need to understand. I think in moments like that, we understand that we cannot rely on the Democratic Party. We cannot rely on the Republican Party, because we see in times like that, crucial times, when you are looking for leadership to speak up and to lead, they are not there. They are not there. Barack Obama is a Nobel Prize winner.
For what?
For
letting
peace.
more Middle Easterners get
No,
killed
I'm
under
saying-
his
I'm
watch
saying
than
at
ever?
Least, at least in order for him to save his legacy, he should have been a very, very vocal against that. Everyone in the Democratic Party, because those people are not running again for office. I don't know why they are not
Right.
vocal. If you don't have any, you're not running for anything anymore. So just at least speak up. For some reason, they are not speaking up. So for Muslim community, they have to understand, not just the Muslim community, I think the Muslim community, the Latino American, the African American, every single community, every single minority, that they were under the illusion that at certain point the leadership will stand up for you. They are not. They are not going to stand up for you. And this is why you have to stand up for yourself. You have to build your own organization, and you have to organize, and you have to learn, and you have to learn how to provide the resources that's needed. For the Muslim community, they have to understand that it's time for us to stop sending hundreds and thousands of dollars for zakah and donation overseas and invest it here at home, because we need it at home. Every time they go and bomb a country, and we have here to raise funds to rebuild this country that was actually bombed by our tax dollars here. If we use this money, the money that we pay for zakah for overseas or sadaqat overseas, if we use it here for our organizations, for strengthening our organization, for building new organization, wouldn't even need to go and rebuild all these countries, and every like 2 years we have another country, another catastrophe that we have to deal with. So we have to learn, and we have to, this is the thing that we have to know. We have to know that, understand that this is not a time to think about Shia versus Sunni for the thing, because the people that hate us, the people that want to take us out, they don't care if you are Shi'i or you are Sunni or you are Wahhabi or you are whatever. They see you, even if you are Sikh, they think you are a Muslim. So we have to unite, and we have to start building our organization. And for the people that come to you and tell you, give you the illusion that if you support the Democratic establishment or the Republican establishment, you will be saved, this is proven wrong right now, and we live it right now.
No, listen, to me, it's very simple, right? You support the matrix. You support the matrix that you're about, right?
Yes.
Yani, you're about something for healthcare and economics and housing and immigration and things like that, right? And then either you're going to fit in, and obviously our matrix has 3 or 4 more pieces to it,
Yes.
right? Muslim, Arab, Syrian, Muslim, Arab, Egyptian, Muslim, Albanian, those different, and then Albanian from Albania, right? Because there's also Albanian from Kosovo.
Yeah.
But my point is, though, is that matrix, you're right. And the key here to understand here is this, is that a lot of times we are very hurt by our own lack of recognition that by our involvement, okay, we can keep people well informed, okay, and more often than not, I'm not telling you they're all open to it. So this isn't like a la happy, My point is, more often than not, they're going to listen. Okay, They may not hear, because God knows there are these supposed Middle East experts. The one that who kept talking about Syria, Jeff Landis. He was always the Assad regime, all the great things. Clearly, he was wrong, right?
I don't trust anyone that say Iran.
So
So we start with Iran and try to teach it
But-
that's Iran, not Iran.
But my point is that, but in most cases, a lot of these institutes, the American Enterprise Institute, the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, even the ones that you don't like, even the ones that the point is, you deliver information to them, because as long as you're delivering information, you
Yes.
have a connection, you have communication, and then there's familiarity, and with familiarity, you get a more robust statement.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think our community, if it's gonna be successful, okay, and here I'm specifically talking about the Muslim American community. If we want to become successful, I agree. You got to get rid of a lot of these petty arguments. Okay, you got to look at our historical leadership. Okay, a lot of it starts with the inner city black imams and the black Muslims there, who have got a lot of experience to teach us. Okay, about the infrastructure, about that stuff, and at the same time, invest. If put that investment here, because I agree with you. I think that if we can help contracts between General Motors, you know what I'm saying, and in Syria to manufacture cars, right? Inshallah, a future Palestinian state, and Tesla to put in,
Not Tesla, anyone else.
but my point is, that's where
agree with that. I understand what you're saying.
but you know what I'm
understand
saying?
what
That's
you're
what Trump's strength is.
Yes.
Trump will tell you I hate you in one face and make you Secretary of State 4 years later.
Yeah, I know what
right?
you're saying.
Him and Marco Rubio. Did you remember that fight that they had? Now he's the Secretary of State.
Little
okay.
Marco, yeah.
JD
Little
Vance.
Marco, Lion Head, yeah.
Right? Okay. JD Vance was actively against. Again, now he's the vice president. Trump has got this flexibility that's remarkable. Okay, it's admirable. Okay, I'm not saying he's the greatest, but I'm just saying is there is a flexibility to him that if you deliver something and you can convince him, you know what I'm saying? Suddenly, even though he hated you in a tweet 2 months ago, he's now your best friend.
Right.
Recognizing the fact that 2 months later, he may be your worst enemy again.
So what do you think? So we have very little time. What do you think going to happen? Like, if is United States going to attack Iran? They are going to go back to the peace negotiation. What is going to happen?
I think that the chess pieces have been set, and I don't think Trump wants to get involved, but there is such tremendous pressure for him to do so that I think within the next few days, it's very likely the United States will conduct a strike, at least, on the nuclear facilities in Iran, if not a full-fledged kind of attack.
To me, that's a very hard question, because listen, you have 3 or 4 other conflicts around the globe. Okay, if the United States is going to do just that, then they're going to have to accept that China might take over Taiwan within 5 years.
Yeah, okay? It's a very volatile situation.
And as the United States, losing Taiwan is infinitely worse, okay, than Iran having a nuclear reactor. Okay.
Your entire microchip infrastructure is gone.
That's my point. Yeah. And now you're completely beholden. As it is, the rare earth dynamic that we're dealing with, right? So now you're looking at, now you're going to be looking at, okay, you're going to do this because another country kind of led you to do it, okay? Now every other country is going to be like, you know what? If the tail's going to wag the dog, we're gonna start doing this, and we're gonna just see how we're gonna be tails, and we're gonna see how we can.
Right.
So I really think that's why the national security meeting didn't come up with a conclusion, because they realized that
3 times, yeah.
Right. I think they have to recognize this isn't about Israel and Iran right now. Anything America does has consequences in South America, is going to have consequences in probably the most unstable part of the world, which ironically enough is not the Middle East, because we know those players. We know who's weak and who's not, right? It's actually the China Sea, the South China Sea, all right? And that entire, you're opening up a front.
It just gives Putin more pretense to keep going in Ukraine.
For me, if you hit Iran, you're telling Putin, take
do
over
what you're
Ukraine.
doing, right?
Keep
Exactly.
doing, I mean, so
because Putin's pretext was also regime change.
It is.
This is a Nazi regime,
But yeah, I think we have only like 1 minute.
And so, what do you think? You didn't answer the question.
I think it's a toss-up. I think it's I think there is a civil war happening inside the White House, in a way that we never seen before or happened before. I think during even the Democratic administration or a Republican administration, there was a big team, and maybe someone that will be like an outlier will say, and they will come back and write a book about it, like everyone was that way and it was that way. But now you see a huge split, and I think Trump, in my analysis, he did not want things to go this way. I think maybe Trump thought that they will come to the negotiation. Israel will do like a very limited strike just to let them come to the negotiation with less demands. But he did not know that Israel will go like,
and I don't think he,
now.
Yeah, and I don't think he expected the Iranian response to be so.
For me, because I think that the Iranian regime also, they will lose a lot if this war will continue. I think there is backroom negotiation right now. I think Qatar can play a big role in that, because Qatar is trusted mainly by a lot of people. And I think eventually they will come back to the table. I think what they are working on right now is trying to find an exit strategy, so everyone can exit without showing that they lost, or
it's very likely, yeah.
So this is what they're working on right now, and I think within 48 hours they can come up with something, and they will come back to the table. That's my analysis. I might be wrong.
It very likely could happen, but Israel's a rabid dog.
And more specifically, Netanyahu.
Yeah,
right?
Netanyahu.
It just put things. But look, I really think, and obviously I have no tremendous insight on Israeli politics in this sense, but I do believe that in general there's this perception of support from the Israeli street, but I actually think that the Israeli street in of itself is exhausted by this continual thing, and it's wreaking havoc on their economy. And now that missiles are raining down, it's a very different environment. So I personally think that there should be a negotiation. Again, I'm with you. I could be totally wrong, but we're looking for it. And inshallah, this will also grant an opportunity for reprieve for the people of Gaza.
Yes.
Okay, because they've suffered enough. The world has been silent for far too long, and it's also about time to say, hey, look. a Palestinian state needs to be achieved, and they need to live in their land in freedom and peace and security, just like everybody else deserves to live in freedom, peace, and security.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right?
All right. Thank you so much.
And we reserve the right to be wrong in our debates, so I know if they... Yalla. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We'll see you next week, inshallah, on the Muslim Take.